Hello, welcome to 5 Minute Software Testing Tips. Today's topic is assumptions in software testing. So let's talk about assumption for about 5 minutes. Um, so I think the assumption is a human nature, right? So we are making a lot of assumptions in our day-to-day life. We sometimes make some assumptions without sort of being aware of it, right? But most of the case, your assumptions are correct. Basically, your assumptions are formed by your past experience or knowledge about things. So most of the case, your assumptions are correct. But once in a while, you can make some wrong assumptions about things, and you have to deal with the consequences of it. But in our day-to-day life, the consequences is not very serious. For example, you have a very close friend and you guys make fun of each other all the time because it's okay to make fun of each other because you guys are close. But one day you make some joke or you make fun of your close friend, but your friend has a really bad day that particular day, and the word that you use in your joke wasn't really funny. It was kind of offended him in a way. So he got angry, right? So you have to deal with the consequence of your wrong assumptions. Or you could assume that on the credit card machine at the shop would work, and you go to the store and then you try to buy some stuff with your credit card, and for some reason the network or internet was down on the shop, so you cannot purchase the thing you wanted to buy, right? So, but the consequences of it is not too bad. You can go to other store or you can apologize to your friend. Uh, so that's okay, but we do make a lot of assumptions in our day-to-day life. Uh, so the reason I mentioned about assumption here is uh, when the assumption comes to a software world, and when if that makes some issue, uh, it can be very costly to the company or to your project, right? Obviously the engineers who work for this particular software company are humans, so they're naturally making assumptions about things, right? PMs can make assumptions about business requirement, developer can make some assumptions about technical detail, or testers can make some assumptions about uh, how they're going to approach the testing, right? So thing about assumption is the bug or issue that is created by this assumption, whoever that makes, can be really hard to catch. Especially, it's really hard to catch in early days, right? Normally, these assumption issues are actually, bubbles up or shows up like some later point, like maybe a few sprints later or a few months later. It'll get you in a way. So we really, really want to avoid these assumption issues, and it's really hard problem. I think it's one of the hard problem for software testing is how can you avoid or prevent or catch uh, this assumption issue. So I don't think there's a good solution for it. I'm just kind of thinking about there's some other thing. Yeah, so we have to be critical. We have to be a critical thinker when we speak, when you read. We need to be very critical. So here's a one sort of example that one question that I got from James Bog when I did the Skype session with them. He asked me this question: you are carrying a calculator and you dropped it. How'd you go about testing it? So if you think about it, if you just give this question to a non-tester, most likely they will say, "I will check the surface of the calculator, trying to find something broken, or trying to test the display, do some simple calculation on this calculator." But basically, what we need to think about it is when you're asked this kind of question is, what kind of calculator, right? I don't want to assume what kind of calculator it is, right? What kind of calculator it is? What do you mean? What do you mean by drop it? How did you drop it? And then where did you drop it? Right? It doesn't really say it in here, but we can imagine this thing. You can assume things, right? And how would you go about testing? What's the purpose of testing? You have to question. You have to clarify the thing that you're testing or the statement. I think that's a very important lesson that I learned from this simple question, right? So we have to be a critical thinker when we see the statement, when we hear people talking about things, and we have to be critical about about their statement. Another thing that I'm using is a risk analysis. This is kind of an interesting tool. That risk analysis is pretty straightforward. You have a scenarios sort of that defines whatever that you're developing, and you negate, and then it actually shows the impact of that negated statement. For example, user should be able to log in with a valid username and password, right? That's the normal scenario. You negate that, then user cannot log in uh, using by using the correct username and password, right? So if you negate the statement, and then you can see the impact of business impact of it. You can really see the business impact of that negation. But also you can have to think about what could possibly cause that issue, right? So that's kind of interesting. You kind of do further on risk analysis, and you can actually work with the developers, right? So for login, there's many ways you can think it can actually happen, right? So for example, SSL can be broken, or a bad network. It could be a mistake in service sides, a backend, or your JavaScript, or your I don't know server side scripts or whatnot. So you can think about how can you make this failure happen, and then you can work with the developer to a developer can write a unit test for it, and you can actually make a system to work that way, so that you can see the risk analysis, the negative statement, and then thinking about how can you make that failure happen. It's an interesting way to approach, and you might find some assumption issues there. Okay, I passed 5 minutes again. Okay, bye.